Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back. I hope you are all doing well. In this episode, I am going to talk about how to connect with loved ones who have passed and when to recognize that they are actually communicating back with us. So, many of you who follow my podcast, I have briefly spoken of the many years that I worked in organ and tissue donation, working with grieving families, mostly through very difficult times in their life, through significant traumas. And during this time, I experienced many different types of grief, many different types of loss. And oddly enough, during this time, I had never experienced a personal loss myself. I had just been observing and witnessing others going through their own tragedies. And I, at some extent, couldn't really even relate because I had never really experienced my own loss. However, about a year and a half ago, I lost my grandmother, and I have been having some pretty significant contact with her. And I wasn't really going to share this information within my podcast, but I'm feeling pretty strongly guided to do so, mainly because I worked around death and loss for so many years, and I've got a very different or unique perspective when it comes to death than the average human, I guess, probably because I was able to see things and also feel and experience things quite a bit, being an intuitive empath. Now, when I was working in this particular field, I did not even know what an empath was. I was not familiar with intuitives. I, had a basic knowledge and understanding of psychics, mediums, clairvoyance, but I did not really understand that what I was seeing or experiencing was part of my intuitive abilities. And so when I would make my rounds at all of the different hospitals and I would work hand in hand with these families, I was going through a gamut of different experiences with them. And I did not understand what was happening at the time. I would be walking past one of the ICU rooms and I would see all the staff in there around a patient, and that patient was coding at the time, and they were resuscitating, and I was seeing mists leaving the patient's body, and then I would see mists coming back into the patient's body, and I would sense and feel things. I would be in patient rooms and I would hear things like noises or voices within my head trying to communicate with me. I would feel things, people grabbing my hand or brushing the back of my neck when no one was there. And, at this time, these were things that were happening to me that I was not sharing with anybody. I was actually quite terrified because given the role that I had, I was working with physicians, nursing staff, but also was working with my staff and oftentimes working with the families and assisting, whether that be in the operating room, recovering organs, or assisting at the bedside, with the family. So at the time that job was extremely overwhelming and I just couldn't tolerate or handle any more activity going on. So like a water faucet, I shut all of that off. And I do feel that many empaths or intuitives do this at some certain point in our lives. Most of us do this when we are small children because it's just too much for us to process when we're seeing things, we're hearing things, we're feeling things, we're smelling things, we're tasting things. We're just sensing all of these things outside of our normal everyday five senses. And it can be extremely terrifying. And for me, when I was working in the hospitals, I would have to go in late at night to do educational programs. So I'd be there at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And I was working in a very old hospital, and our office was, off in another area that was very quiet. Not many people were over there. It wasn't really near any of the units. And so I had to spend some time in the office alone, and I would have some very weird experiences happening to me. I'd be in there by myself, and my coworker's chair would move, or I would hear voices, whispers when no one was there, knocking, what sounded like footsteps outside of the hallway. Just a lot of what people would call paranormal activity, and it would kind of scare me. So then I would pack up my stuff, and then I'd head over to the unit where people were. But what was really happening, I feel, was that I was being communicated with, and I did not understand at the time what was going on. So I was just in fear, and I, would shut it down, and then I would leave. But now, looking back, I'm in a different, looking at things from a different perspective. I have been in contact with many in what we would call the spirit realm, or the other side of the veil, so to speak. And I'm not as scared anymore as I used to be, because I have a deeper understanding of what is happening. And I understand that is their subtle way of being able to communicate with us in the material world here in this third dimension. So when they are knocking, or they're whispering, or they're um, moving things around, it's really just them trying to get our attention, and they want us to hear their story. They want us to communicate. They want us to be in contact with them. So when we are connecting with our loved ones who have passed, it's almost like tuning into a radio station. uh, Many of us don't believe that there is an afterlife, or that there is something on the other side of death. And I personally feel that since we are all energy, energy never dies, it just transforms. So when we pass on, we leave this physical reality, we leave this third dimensional existence, and we move on into another consciousness, into another realm, a dimension, whatever it may be. And we move on through our light body, through our soul. And I witnessed this many times when I was at the bedside with people who were passing on. Maybe they were being extubated, withdrawn from the ventilator. Oftentimes, sadly, there was many patients who had resulted in being an organ donor, that the family decided not to be there during the withdrawal of the ventilator. So I would be in the room with the patient during that time, during their last breath, during those last minutes of their life, and I would witness their spirit or their soul leaving their physical body. And there were many times when I felt as if I was assisting them to the other side. And I know that sounds very crazy, but I have done a lot of research on this. Most of us are very familiar with near death experiences. Anita Morjani, Mellon Thomas Benedict, even Diane Morrissey, they have some excellent stories out there about their near death experiences. But there is also a concept called a shared death experience, and that is when we assist someone to the other side. And I did not know that this was happening all those many moons ago when I was doing this particular job. But after some pretty extensive research, I have found that I was doing that. I was losing track of time. I was, kind of floating out of my body a little bit. Just a lot of very strange things were happening to me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. But now that I have a deeper and more you know, wider, expanded kind of sense of what was going on, I can share these things, and I don't feel as if I'm afraid to do so. Like if you were to ask me, maybe 10 years ago, I would have been kind of afraid to talk about these things. But now it's definitely much more peaceful for me. And I want to be able to share this information with you so that it will be peaceful for you as well. So whether you've experienced the loss of someone in the past, or you're going through a situation currently where maybe someone in your family is ill, and you know that death is imminent and that it could be coming soon, or that maybe you are experiencing some communication from the other side. I just wanted to share some of the ways that we can communicate with our loved ones, and how to recognize when they're communicating back with us. So one of the ways that I know when a loved one is communicating with me is a super simple way, is through dreams. So, if you want to communicate with your loved one, then before you go to bed, I would suggest saying it out loud. I want to communicate with so and so. writing it down. I wish to communicate with so and so. And if you have questions, maybe you have some questions, write those down, put them under your pillow. Um, and really send that intention. Remember, I talk about how our thoughts are electric, our emotions are magnetic, and our words are an amplifier or a broadcaster. So if you have a thought that you want to connect with a loved one and you put an emotion of love and compassion behind it, and then you speak that out into existence, you will have contact. Now, you may not have it that exact night, but if you continue to do this, you will eventually have contact. And I have been having it regularly with my grandmother. And this was funny. My grandma was 91 years old, and we always talked about after her death, how I always asked her, "How are you going to haunt me?" And I would joke about it. We would laugh. And she would say, "Well, I'm actually going to make you laugh. I'm going to do things that make you smile and make you laugh," which I just love that. And that's exactly what she has been doing with both me and my sister. So, um, it's just really funny how when you open up that chain of communication or that flow and you tune into that radio station, you will have a very beautiful contact and communication with those loved ones. And I have talked to many of my donor families, and they would share some really beautiful experiences of how their loved ones were communicating with them. And back when I was working in donation, I had a very specific case with a family where there was a man who was roughly, I think he was in his 40s, and he had fallen out of the back of his pickup truck. He was just moving some things around in there and had fallen out and fell and hit his head on the concrete. And unfortunately, he was declared brain dead. And we moved forward with recovering organs on him and placing those with recipients. And I worked very closely with this family. And that evening, I had a vivid dream about him, so clear. It was almost like I was living an experience with him. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that was the most vivid dream I've had in a really long time." And at the time I'm like, "I can't share this dream with this family. They just went through this loss. They're in trauma, they're in grief. There's no way I can share this." And who even knows if this was a contact or communication, for them. So, I went on about my life, and about a year later, we had a flag raising ceremony at the hospital, and this family showed up, and they actually sought me out because they remembered me, helping them with their son. And the mother came up to me, and we started chatting, and I just kind of nonchalantly shared with her that I had had a dream about her son the next evening and what it was about. And her eyes welled up in tears. And she said that the information that you just shared with me was exactly what I needed to hear. That was so potent and so pertinent to my life that I'm so grateful that you shared that information with me. And at that time, it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, wow, like that he actually did come through me in that dream because I was tuned in to that frequency to hear that message or that information. However, I wasn't confident, or I didn't trust enough in my intuition to be able to share that information with that family. But looking back, everything works out in divine timing, and it was all meant for a reason that I shared it with her a year later. But at that time, I didn't really realize it. And also, I was a little fearful of that happening. It really wasn't my jam to be the organ donor whisperer. I really wasn't into that at the time, but I was noticing that some of these donors were sharing information with me. And so dreams are a huge way that our loved ones will communicate with us. And most of the time, they're extremely vivid. It's almost like you're living the experience with them. You can even go into a deep meditation and connect with them as well. Set the intention before you dive into your meditation and connect with them. That can also be almost as visual as a dream, whether you're lucid dreaming or astral traveling. I've had many experiences with not my recent grandmother who passed, but my mom's mom, who has passed many years ago. I've had many lucid dreams where she has shown up. They can also communicate with us through objects. So holding a belonging to them. Maybe there was something that you and they had that you would talk about, or something that was meaningful to both of you, holding that object and then speaking out loud to them. It's so important to speak out loud and really set that intention out there. They can also speak to us through our pets. And this happens. I had a coworker pass about 6 or 8 months ago, and I didn't even know that he had passed. I was unaware of his passing, and I was sitting on my bed. It was kind of in the evening. I was sitting on my bed with my cat. My cat was asleep, and I was think I was reading. Yeah, I was just sitting there reading, and my cat just jumped straight up out of the bed and took off like a bandit, and then ran into something and broke a glass. And it was just this really crazy experience. And then within minutes, I had a friend text me that my friend had passed away. And I knew that it was him visiting me because he always was loved my cat. He always asked about my cat. He always talked about my cat. And it was really funny that he kind of spooked my cat. And he was kind of a jokester. So I kind of felt that I knew immediately that was him. I knew immediately. And that is the funny thing, is that he came to visit me even before I knew he had passed. And I have had these experiences my whole life, especially being around all these organ donors as well. So pets are a huge way that they can communicate with us. Now, pets see on a different spectrum than we do. They can see auras, they can see different frequencies, they can see through dimensions, they can see through realms. They have a different sense of vision than we can. So it's much easier for them to communicate through us. Very similar to children. Children are the same. Oftentimes, our loved ones will come and speak with our children, because children are of a higher frequency, higher vibration. Oftentimes they're living in a more joyful state of being, and it's easier for our loved ones to connect on that level. So when we want to connect with our loved ones, we want to raise our vibration. We want to be in a higher frequency because they are in a higher frequency. And oftentimes when we lose our loved one, what do we do? We grieve. What is grief? Grief throws us into a much lower vibrational frequency, and it makes the water a little bit more muddy for us to be able to communicate with them, for us to see them, for us to sense them, because we're in such a lower vibrational state. But if we raise our vibration and we find ourselves thinking of them more in a joyful sense or a joyful state, we will have a much better chance of communicating with them, and then also receiving the information that they could be sending or sharing with us. Another way to communicate with our loved ones is to do what's called automatic writing. That's basically where you just sit down in a quiet space, and then you ask to communicate with your loved one, and you let the information flow through you, and you just write it out. You do not use your conscious mind to do this. You just connect, and you let whatever comes through just move through you, through your hand, through the pen, and put it down onto the paper. I've had some families share with me that this has been a very beneficial tool for them for their healing process, because they've been able to communicate with their loved one. They feel very close to their loved one. And it's also been a sense of moving through things like closure, because they've been able to write things down, and it gives them kind of a recording or a record of their memories and things that come through in that, and they can keep it like a journal. They also speak through us through our clairs. I've talked about the clairs in previous podcasts, and so you've got your clear smelling, which is one way my grandmother absolutely communicates with me. I had gone home for about 8 months to spend some time in her home after she had passed. And the day of my birthday, I woke up at like 3:33, of course. And she was right there with me. I could sense her presence. I could smell her perfume, like she had dumped the bottle on my face. It was so incredibly strong. You cannot question that. Yes, I was in her house. Yeah, her place might smell her like her perfume because she uses it. But when you wake up and you literally smell such an overwhelming scent, you just can't question that. And I knew she was there because my arms had goosebumps. Every hair on the back of my neck was standing up, and I knew it was her. I got very emotional, and she had come to visit me on my birthday, and it was very powerful. She visits my sister through animals. My sister will see birds, dragonflies, different types of, butterflies, those types of things. So those are also ways that they will communicate through nature, whether that be feathers. Oftentimes I've heard feathers. And I've got a friend who communicates with someone that he lost through dragonflies. And praying mantis are another one. If you literally sit there with them and talk to them, it's really funny. My friend has an entire story and he swears by this, and he didn't even really believe in this stuff, but he swears by this, that his friend comes and visits him, and it's a dragonfly, and he will shake his head. He'll ask the dragonfly questions, and the dragonfly will literally shake its head yes and no, and it will come back and visit in certain locations after he's asked it to come back to a certain space. And he knows 100% that is his friend. And it's not just the dragonfly, it's other things will come up, whether it be the other senses, the smells, the taste, the touch, um, through sounds. Oftentimes I know I'll hear my grandmother say, Tanya, and I'll turn around and no one's there, but she's drawing my attention. And then I will smell the smell. So it's like, okay, I heard you say my name and now I smell the smell. I know that it's you. I've gotten to the point with my clairsentience, I'm so good at knowing or recognizing when she's there, I can feel it, that I just know her energetic signature. So once you get used to them being around, you'll be able to pinpoint, is this a feminine energy, a masculine energy? Is this a younger energy, an older energy? Is this a pet? Is this a human? Is this not a human? What is this? You get a lot better at recognizing when you have an energetic presence around you, but you have to tune into that radio station. If you're fearful of this, if you're listening to this podcast and right now you're thinking, I don't believe in this is scary, then you're not tuned into that radio station. You're not opening yourself up to receiving that communication or that contact. And there might be an underlying emotion there that could be causing that as well. Maybe it's grief or rejection or loss, abandonment, anger, hurt, whatever it may be. There could be an emotion there that could be blocking that as well. So, moving through those emotions can also help you tune in to when your loved ones are communicating with you. Oftentimes you can see it through your senses. My friend has her dad will visit and the lights will flicker and she's like, Dad's here. And it just happens. And you can call upon them when you speak it out loud, call upon them and have them come visit. And then that's her way of recognizing when her dad is in her space, is in her energetic field. Sometimes you'll be going about your day and then you'll just have an overwhelming thought of your loved one and it just floods your entire being. That's when they're there with you. When you feel them, when you think of them, when you sense them, that's when they're trying to communicate with you. So stop what you're doing and just close your eyes and really tune in. What do you want? Why are you here? Are you here to share something with me? Are you here to give me guidance? Send me on a path? Give me information? What is it? Music. I've had this happen to me. I had a friend pass, and I woke up one night in the middle of the night, and my sound bar on my television was blasting angelic music, loud, loud. And I knew it was someone that I knew who had passed. And I was like, whoa, you can turn down the volume just a little bit. That was a little obnoxious. I think I woke up the entire neighborhood. But that was a way that they were trying to communicate. Now, their energy, right? So we're all energy. And once we pass, they are in their full light body form. So they can really push through that energy, but they're looking for energy sources. So that can often be our electronics, our cell phone. My grandmother, oh my gosh, when I talked about how she wants to make me laugh, her favorite thing to do is mess with my cell phone. Oh my gosh, that's like her favorite. And the irony of this is she was 91 years old and she hated cell phones. We bought her a smartphone and she hated that thing. I tried to call her on it. She's like, no, call me at the home phone. Call me on my landline. And I'm like, okay. So when she passed away, that was one of the things she had gifted to me was her cell phone. And she communicates with me all the time through that. She just messes with the apps and she turns it on and off. She calls, she has random people call me all the time. It's just really funny. So that's one way that she is definitely communicating, with me. Another way is your ears will ring. This has been something that I have been sensing for many, many years now. And it's not like I have tinnitus. It's not like a constant ear ringing all the time. It's more like you're just chilling out, going about your day. And then you have this massive ring in one of your ears or maybe both of your ears. And then you feel like a little bit of goosebumps and you're like, somebody's here. I can definitely sense it. So when our ears ring, it's basically that there's an energy around us that's at a higher vibrational frequency. And that tunes us in almost like little antennas, like an ant, right? Little antennas tunes us in that something else is around us in our energetic field. So that could be another way that they're trying to get your attention. Now, they try to do all of these things all the time to get our attention. And oftentimes we're so distracted or so closed off to it that we aren't even listening. We aren't even hearing. We aren't even sensing that they're trying to communicate with us. So we have to open ourselves up a little bit more to be able to recognize when they are trying to communicate with us. So, what I like to tell people to do is set up an agreement with them, speak it out loud, write it down, say, okay, we really loved going to this river together. We used to go on walks and we used to sit on this bench. When I go to this bench, I want you to communicate with me. And I want you to communicate with me in this way. I want you to show me a butterfly, or I want you to show me a dandelion, or I want you to, show me a penny. I have a family, a donor mom that used to share with me, she would travel all over the place and pennies would literally fall out of the sky in front of her feet. And she knew it was her daughter every time. And that's the way that her daughter communicates with her. But she also spoke that out to her daughter, that this is how I want you to communicate with me. So I know that it's you. So set an agreement with them, write down where, when, how do you want them to communicate, and speak it out loud or write it in a letter. Like I talked earlier, raise your vibration. It's more important to be in a joyful state when you're connecting with them as much as possible. So doing things that remind you of them, and then be aware of the surroundings, and have a better kind of tune yourself in a little bit more when you are communicating with them. Look for signs: feathers, butterflies, pennies, birds, dragonflies, smells, sounds, tastes. Even you might taste something. If it was an Italian, I had an Italian family and she loved it was eggplant parmesan or something. So he would taste eggplant parmesan when he wasn't even eating it and he knew that it was his grandmother. So it's things like that. They can work through our senses. Maybe you'll notice items are moved around your home or in your vehicle or at your workplace when no one has been there. Maybe you'll see a chair move or an indentation on the bed. I have a friend who, when she knows a loved one visits, she'll be at home by herself. She'll be sitting on the bed and then she'll feel something behind her sit on the bed and turn around. She thought it was her husband and it wasn't. It was one of her loved ones, whether it was her grandfather or her father. So those are subtle, subtle ways that they communicate with us. So I hope that some of these ways of connecting and communicating with our loved ones on the other side were helpful to you. And give it a shot. Just give it a try and see. And be patient with it. Don't get frustrated, because the more frustrated you get, you create resistance. And when we create resistance, we know that the energy cannot flow through. It's almost like if you visualize a river and it's flowing freely and then it gets caught up at, say, a beaver dam, or there's a bunch of trees in the way and the water has to kind of flow around it and make a new direction. When you get frustrated or you want to force something, it creates that beaver dam, it creates the resistance, and then that will block the flow of energy to you. So when you're doing this, just keep an open heart, an open mind, put it out there into the universe, and then just go about your day. Go do something else, and before you know it, you will find that they are starting to communicate with you, and trust it. I think that's the most important part too, is to trust that when you see that butterfly or you see that dragonfly, trust that, that could be my loved one connecting with me. I'm going to just sit here for a minute and see what happens. I've had several situations where I've had one dragonfly show up and I thought, this could be my loved one. Oh, let's wait and see. And then 3, 4, 5 of them show up and I'm like, all right, here they are. They're all here, So a lot of it is just being patient and being subtle and sitting with that energy and really trusting your intuition, because that's what you're doing, is you're tapping in to your own intuition. They are always with us. They are always around us. Even though we can't see them, they are still there with us. It's like the air that we breathe. We don't see the air, but we know that it's there and it's providing us with life and it's providing us with love, just like our loved ones are on the other side. So, I wish you all so much healing if you're going through the loss of a loved one or if you've lost someone in the past and you're having a really difficult time getting through it. I send you so much uplifting, loving energy, and I look forward to sharing more tips, tools, information with you in future shows. Thank you. You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT Tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.